somewhere we could get away. If you wanna find another place, love, disappear and never leave a trace.
Okay, so they give us f of x equals tangent x, and our a, so it's going to be centered around this value of pi over 4. Okay, so they want us to find t2x, so the second Taylor polynomial, and the third Taylor polynomial. So the only difference between these two is one more term. So I'll do the second one, and then we'll add on the third or the fourth term, I guess, for t3. So for the second Taylor polynomial, we need up to the second derivative. So we'll do the first derivative, which is going to be secant squared x. And then this is the same thing. I'll think of it as secant x squared. And then we'll have to employ the chain rule for the second derivative. So we're going to bring the 2 down in front, and we have secant x to the 1. And then derivative of the inside is secant x tangent x, which is equal to 2 secant squared x tangent x. And we actually need to evaluate all three of these equations at a equals pi over 4. So f of pi over 4 equals tangent at pi over 4, which is just going to be 1. And then we have f prime of pi over 4 being equal to secant pi over 4 squared, which is actually square root of 2 squared, which is equal to 2. Okay. And then we have our f double prime at pi, whoa, that was weird, pi over 4 equals 2 times secant pi over 4 squared times tangent of pi over 4, which is equal to 2 times 2 times 1, which is equal to 4. Okay, so on the next slide, I'm going to put it all together. So our t2x equals f of a, so that's f of pi over 4, which we found to be 1, plus f prime of a at pi over 4, so that was 2, and this is over a 1, but you don't have to write the 1 on the bottom, and then x minus a, so x minus pi over 4 to the 1, plus, now we have f double prime of pi over 4, which was 4, and then that's over 2 factorial, which is 2, times x minus a, and this to the second. So we can just simplify it real quick. Equals 1 plus 2 times x, whoop, that's a minus, x minus pi over 4, plus 2 times x minus pi over 4 squared. Okay, so that's our second Taylor polynomial. That's our expression for that. Okay, so now for t3 of x, we just need to go to the third derivative. So if we recall our second derivative of x was 2 times secant squared x tangent x. So for the third derivative, we're actually going to use the product rule. So I'm just going to take the 2 out completely, and we'll take the derivative of the first. So secant squared x, the derivative of that is going to be 2, we already did it, 2 times secant x times derivative of secant x, which is secant x tangent x. And this thing here, everything that I've written inside the bracket so far, that's the derivative of secant squared x. So then we also have to just rewrite the tangent x. And then we keep secant squared x the same, and take the derivative of tangent. So that's another secant squared x. Okay? So then f triple prime is going to equal 4 secant squared x tangent squared x plus 2 times secant to the 4th x. Okay? A lot of secants and tangents in this one. So then, when we evaluate it at pi over 4, like we need to do, we get that this is 4, I guess I'll just rewrite them. Secant pi over 4 to the second, tangent pi over 4, to the second plus 2 times secant pi over 4 to the fourth. Okay, so this actually turns out to be, I'll just simplify it. So that's like 4 times 2, which is 8 times 1. So that's 8 plus, and this is a 2 to the second, because this is like, okay, so secant pi over 4 is radical 2, root 2. Root 2 to the fourth is going to be 4, times 2 is another 8. So this is going to be 16, okay? So that's what f triple prime of a is, 16. So when we add that term in, we get t3 of x. So we're just going to rewrite the first 3 terms from t2. So 1 plus 2 times x minus pi over 4 plus 2 times x minus pi over 4 squared. And then we have this added term of 16 over 3 factorial, which is 3 times 2 times 1, which is 6. And then we have x minus pi over 4 to the third. So we're just going to simplify this term by dividing by 2. So this is an 8 over 3, and we'll rewrite the final answer. 1 plus 2 times x minus pi over 4 plus 2 times x minus pi over 4, and this one's squared, and then plus 8 over 3 x minus pi over 4 to the third. Okay, and that's our third Taylor polynomial.